Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to extend our knowledge of lines to talk specifically about horizontal and vertical lines instead of just diagonal. So by the end of this, we should be able to graph those, write equations of them, and to talk about the slope for both horizontal and vertical lines. So first, let's talk some of these key ideas here. So what is a horizontal line? What is a vertical line? And what's it all about? Starting with horizontal here, and you're going to want to sketch a graph of this. Horizontal line is a line that is parallel to the x-axis, going left or right like this. And it could be anywhere on the graph. It could be here, 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 but it's got to be horizontal. Whereas a vertical line is going up or down, and to be parallel to the y-axis. So that could be somewhere like here. It doesn't have to be here. It could be anywhere on the coordinate plane. We're going to use these graphs then to talk about, what are the equations, what are the slopes, and what does obviously the graph look like. Okay, so starting with a horizontal line, I actually want to begin with slope for a second. Remember, slope is always defined by the variable m and is rise over run. Okay, so or the change in your y's or the change in your x. Okay, since we have a graph, we can count that here. And in order to calculate slope, you're going to pick 2 points and see how the graph changes from that point to the next, which will tell you something about the steepness, even though we have a horizontal line here, but we'll get to that. So I'm going to pick 2 points. It could be any 2 points. I could pick 2 points next to each other, but I'm not going to. Oops. Let's pick these 2 points just for fun. So I'm going to go ahead and count how much I have to rise to get from this point to this point and how much I have to run. So rise means up or down. So how much do I have to travel up or down to get from here to here? Hopefully you're thinking in your head you don't go up or down at all, so your rise is going to be 0. Now your run from this point to this point is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, because your rise is up and down and your run is left to right. Okay, so now you have 0 divided by 4, which simplified is just 0. Okay, so for any horizontal line, your slope is always going to be 0, which if you drew this line, you'd have the same situation, right? From here to here, you don't have to go up or down at all. You just go left or right. So that's true for any horizontal line. So horizontal lines always have a slope of 0. Make sure you write that down. Always, 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 always. That's nice about horizontal and vertical lines. That's always true. So anytime you see a horizontal line, you know automatically it's a 0 slope. To go back to my skiing or snowboarding reference here, it makes sense because pretend you're skiing on this line. You wouldn't really move at all because there's no steepness. There's no incline, right? You wouldn't go downhill there. You would just stay stationary. So there's no slope to ski on, 0 slope. Okay. So then going into the equation of the line, we know that we always write, or at least right now, well, one way to write equation of a line is y equals mx plus b. Just as a reminder, this m is always your slope, whatever's attached to the x, and your b is your y-intercept. So we're going to go ahead and write the equation of this line with what we know now. Okay, so we know our slope is 0, so that goes in for m, so it's 0x. Okay, our y-intercept, we're going to look at the graph. Here's the y-axis right here. The y-intercept is where it crosses at, which is here at 2, positive 2. So it'd be plus 2. And we're going to simplify that because what's 0 times anything? 0 times anything is 0. Okay, and 0 plus 2 is just 2. So this is the same as y equals 2. So the equation of this line is just y equals 2. Let's talk about why that makes sense. Any equation is just a mathematical rule. And this rule says all your y values are equal to 2. And if I pick any point on this line, say this one here, well, the coordinates would be x is 5, y is 2. If I pick this point that I highlighted before, your x is -3, your y is 2. And no matter where you are in this graph, you're going up 2 on the y-axis. So your y value will always be equal to 2, which is why the equation makes sense, is because it's telling you the rule for the line. And the rule for the line is the y value is always 2. Versus if you had this line down here, let's say you pick this point where x is 3 and your y is -4. or as -4, I'm sorry. This point here, your x is -5, your y is still -4. So the equation for this line would be y equals -4. Okay, and the nice thing about horizontal lines is they'll always work this way. So the equation of a horizontal line, make sure you write this down, because this will always be true. I'm abbreviating. Equation of a horizontal line is always going to be y equals some number. And I'm just going to use the number sign, not the hashtag, but the number sign. Or y always equals some unknown number. It could be like y equals question mark. Whatever that number that y always is. Okay, so the equation of a horizontal line is always going to be y equals a number. The slope of a horizontal line is always going to be 0. Okay, let's look at vertical lines now. Okay, vertical line, a little bit different, and I'm not actually going to go ahead and calculate rise over run for this one because I prefer to talk about my skiing example, and then we'll go back to rise over run. Let's say you're skiing down this line. What is going to happen? Well, you're going to fall to your deaths because there is no mountain. You just drop straight down. Okay, so the slope of a vertical line, well, actually, let's go to rise over run first, and then I'll kind of tie that back in. Let's pick 2 points on the line. We'll count a rise in our run. I'm just going to pick these 2. It could be any 2 points. How much do you have to rise to get from here to here? Well, you'd go up 1, 2. How much do you run to get from here to here? Well, do you move left or right at all? No, you don't. So the slope is 2 over 0. And in math, you can never divide by 0. Okay, think about it this way. It's like you have 2 cookies and you divide them into 0 groups. It's impossible because there's at least one group of the 2 cookies. So first of all, in math, never divide by 0. You can't do it. If you plug in your calculator, it'll say an error. Which means that this slope is not possible. Not possible in our situation we call undefined. Which just means it's not defined or there's no defined number for that slope. Okay, no slope to ski down if you want to think about it that way. Okay, now for our equation of this line, it's a little trickier because we're talking about a vertical line with no slope, so you can't plug in undefined for m. So we're going to go back to the example where I talk about the points here. So let's say I have these 3 points. Let's look for a pattern. So here, my x is -3. Oh, that's a horrible pen. Let's try something else. My x is -3. And here my y value is 1, 2, also -3. Okay, what about this point? My x is -3. My y is going up 1. Here, my x is -3. My y has gone up 1 to +3. And what do you notice that remains consistent here is actually the x value this time, right? So before it was the y values were the same. Now it's the x values are the same. And that's always going to be the equation of a vertical line. Make sure you write this down. This is the summary. Okay, the equation of a vertical line has that consistent x coordinate. And if we think about it this way, where a mathematical rule kind of just tells you something about the graph, here your y value is always equal to 2 or to -4. Here, my x value is always equal to -3, and that's the rule that defined this line. Okay, so the equation of a vertical line is always going to be x equals some number, whatever the x value of the graph is. And to summarize, the slope of your vertical line is always going to be undefined. Think about it like skiing down that mountain, you'd fall to your death. That's not possible. Okay. Again, I cannot stress enough that if you're going to have anything written down, I mean, I always recommend the examples, but this is the summary of the key points. So now we can move on to a few examples where we practice graphing, and then we practice finding the slope and writing the equation. Okay, so first we're going to graph a line y equals 5. And I just want you to remember that the line y equals 5, I'm just going to sketch a quick table here, means your y value always has to equal 5. So all of the y values are going to be 5 of your points. Your x values can be whatever you want. It could be 0, it could be -5, it could be 4, it could be 1. I just pick random values. And then we plot this as a point, right? Okay, so this is the point 0, 5. So we're going to plot 0, moving left or right 0, but 5, on our y-axis. And then we plot x is -5, comma, y is 5. So x is -5, y is 5 is going to be here. Okay, then we've got 4, +5. Again, that's like a coordinate, just in a table. So we go 4, 5 is up here, and you're starting to see what this looks like. But just for good measure, I'm going to plot that last point I put in the table. And as stated above, anytime you have a y equals, you're going to get a horizontal line. Okay, versus this problem, you have an x equals. So that means it doesn't matter what your y value is, but the x coordinate is always going to be -2. So you can pick any number you want. So it could be like -1 is your x value. It could be 3. It could be 10, but that goes off my graph, so I'm not going to pick that. It could be 1/2 if you want to be funky. I'm just going to pick a couple different points and plot them. So my x always has to be -2 here. My y always has to be 5 here. That is the rule, and that's what an equation is a mathematical rule. So we're going to plot -2, -1 first. Then x is -2 again, but your y value is 3. Then x is -2, but your y value is -5. And when you plot those points and connect the dots, you should have a vertical line, because we know that x equals is always going to give me a vertical line. Okay. Next thing I want you to do is to calculate the slope of these lines. Whenever I calculate the slope, I go back to that skiing example, and I'll even draw it. Pretend this is you skiing or snowboarding or whatever it is that you want to do for your winter sport on a mountain. Okay, what is your slope here? Or we can look back at our notes and say, the slope of the horizontal line is always this. The slope of the vertical line is always this. Okay, but the reason why is that skiing example, or you're not rising or you're not running. So first for graph A, which is this first one here, the slope is going to be 0 because it's like the mountain where you never move. And for graph B, the slope is going to be undefined because it's like that graph where you fall to your death. And that's always consistent, so that's kind of nice. Last but not least, we're going to write some equations. And I highly recommend just kind of sketching a picture first so we can get a visual of what's going on. So we want the horizontal line through the point +2 on the x and -4 on the y. It's got to be horizontal, so it's going to look like this. Okay, so that's the first one, and I'm going to sketch the graph also for the second one. Okay, so this time we want a vertical line through -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then y value is going to be -3, so x is -5, y is -3 will be down here, but we want the vertical line this time. You can kind of visualize what's going on here, and then we can write the equation. Okay, so you can remember what we talked about up here. The equation of a horizontal line is always going to be y equals a number. And the equation of a vertical line then is always going to be x is some number. The question is, what number is it? And that's why I like to look at points again. So we know that this point was 2, -4. Okay, this point over here would be like, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe it's x is -5. Your y value is still -4. And in both these points, your y value is -4 because that's the rule for the equation. Doesn't matter what your x is, you're moving left or right, but you're always going to go down 4 units. So the equation of this line then is y equals -4. Okay, with similar reasoning, I want you to tell me the equation of part B, and I'll come back with the answer in a second. Okay, if done correctly, you should have got the equation x is -5, because if you look at this graph, everywhere you go, you're moving on the x -5 units, right? So I wrote some points here. We have -5, 1, -5, -3. That's what's consistent here, and it defines that line. Okay, or horizontal line is always y equals, vertical line is always x equals, but you can see y through that example. Okay, so anytime you have a horizontal line, the y is always going to be consistent. You can just look at the y coordinate. And anytime you have a vertical line, the x is always going to be consistent, so you can look at the x coordinate, if that helps. So that's everything you need to know about horizontal and vertical lines. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Make sure you took some good notes, and have a good rest of your day.